Note echo is probably the easiest player device to initially understand, but the deepest player to explore. So what is note echo? In a traditional delay effect, an audio signal comes out of an instrument and into a delay where it's repeated a certain number of times, and at a certain speed. The note echo player takes that fundamental concept, but moves its position in the music-making process, from echoing the audio signal coming out of an instrument to instead echoing the notes going in to play that instrument. Let me show you what I mean. We'll drag our old faithful ID8 grand piano into the rack and add a note echo above it. Let's reset note echo immediately to clear the default preset. Now when I play a note on my MIDI keyboard, it first passes through note echo, where, just like a traditional delay, it gets repeated a certain number of times and at a certain speed. But this isn't just repeating the sound of the first note. It's generating repetitions of the actual note itself to play the piano multiple times. When I press one note, it acts like I pressed the key 4 more times. You can see the repetitions happening on Note Echo's front panel. If you want fewer note repetitions, you can decrease the repeat knob or increase for more repetitions. We can change the speed of the repetitions too, and decide whether the speed is measured in our song's tempo, like eighth notes and quarter notes, or in milliseconds. Unlike a traditional delay, since note echo is creating repetitions of the actual note itself before it reaches the instrument, we can modify the repeated notes and the instrument's performance will change as a result. The pitch and velocity knobs establish further rules for the way each note repetition behaves. If we set our pitch knob to +1, then each time a note is repeated, it will increase its pitch by 1 semitone, creating a chromatic scale. If we set it to +3, each note repetition moves up the keyboard 3 semitones, arpeggiating a fully diminished chord. And if we set it to +12, our repetitions jump up a full octave each time. The velocity knob works off the same concept. When we scale the velocity up on note echo, it's like each note repetition is striking the piano harder and harder, or softer and softer. But that's it for note echo's settings. Let's take a look at a couple of musical ways to use note echo. One technique is to not actually use note echo as an echo at all. If I set note echo's velocity to the default position, the repeats knob to 1, and the pitch to +12, our single repeated note jumps up 1 octave. But if I now set the step length to 0, you can hear 2 notes simultaneously, both the one I'm playing and the octave above generated by note echo. If I change from +12 to another pitch interval, like +7, you can hear we get a 2-note chord with parallel fifths, or what guitarists like to call a power chord. But note echo is polyphonic, so it won't only echo and transpose single notes. It works on chords too, turning this into interesting clusters. If we increase the repeats knob to 2, we now have a 3-note chord with the root, the 5th, and the 9th. At 3 repeats, we get a note a further +7 semitones higher, creating what's called a quintal harmonic stack, which you can refer to next time you want to impress your friends. But if you haven't tried writing in quintal harmonics, and I'm guessing you haven't, or quartal harmonics, which you'd get by setting the pitch knob to +5, you'll be surprised by the new ideas it'll draw out of you. This idea of using note echo to create chords can also be useful if you make house music. While the Scales and Chords player uses music theory to automatically create what's called diatonic chords, the correct chord to fit your song's key, note echo can be used to create something else called parallel chords. Let's change our pitch knob to +1 and our repeats knob to 12. The result sounds more like a piano falling off a building, because what we're hearing is all 12 tones of the chromatic scale played at once. However, the green circles on note echo's display act both as visual feedback, showing you the echoes as they take place, and also as mutes, allowing you to disable individual repeats in the chain. So let's mute all the repetitions to start and specify the intervals of a minor 7 chord, popular in dance music. In chromatic terms, a minor 7 is made up of a root note, and then notes 3, 7, and 10 steps higher. Instant house music. the chord doesn't adjust diatonically to our song's key. You don't need to memorize the chromatic recipe for different parallel chord styles like this. By browsing the included patches for note echo, you can load many different options. This idea of muting certain repetitions isn't just useful when creating parallel chords. Let's revisit the step length setting to show you what I mean. First, let's get off our piano sound by replacing it with a subtractor synthesizer that I'll right-click to reset and change the default waveform from sawtooth to square. On note echo, I'll set my pitch to 0, my repeats to 8, and my step length to 1/16. The velocity I'll set to a negative value to slightly soften the repetitions. Now, I can use the mutes to decide which note repeats are triggered or muted, much the same way I might work with a step sequencer, turning off certain repetitions to create rhythmic patterns. When I play melodic lines, these repetitions and rhythms interact to form really nice musical passages, like this. To keep this tutorial focused on note echo, allow me to make a few quick production decisions here while you wait. Let's see, I'll add some reverb, blend a triangle wave into the patch, maybe a little LFO to the filter, and there, let's record. Let's add to this idea by dragging another instrument into the rack. And let's add a note echo above it and reset the patch. Another thing I like to do with note echo is to combine them. So if we set up this note echo to repeat an octave below and 1/8 note after our played note, we get this. Simple enough. But let's add a second note echo in the rack underneath our first one. We'll reset it and then make another simple style of echo with 2 repeats. But this time, scaling an octave up with a quarter note step length. I'll disable the first note echo so you can hear this one on its own. With both note echoes active, our second note echo isn't simply getting the note I'm playing on my keyboard, it's also getting the note generated above it, taking a simple octave repetition and making it more interesting with the two working together. We can see the results of the 2 note echoes if we record that into our sequencer while activating the direct record switch above our players. With direct record activated, our players aren't just generating repetitions on the fly, they're recording the results into the sequencer. I'll add a bass line to these parts by dragging in an angry analog bass sound fittingly called angry analog bass. Okay, maybe a little less angry. Let's use one of the early techniques we covered. Drag note echo above our bass. Reset it, 1 repeat, 0 step length, and -12 on the pitch. Now our bass has a lower octave sub to its sound. The more you work with note echo, the more you'll find yourself thinking through different ways to experiment and strategize with it. I'd like to add some type of guitarish texture to this idea, and one of the things I like to do with note echo is use it as a type of strumming device. I'll drag a guitar patch into the rack. Remember that parallel chord trick we used to make house music? Let's do that again, dragging a note echo above our guitar, resetting it, minimizing our step length, maximizing our repeats, setting our pitch to a chromatic +1 scale, muting all our notes to start, and now activating the intervals for a basic guitar major chord voicing. So that'd be the root note, +4, +7, +12, and +16. So far, no strum. But watch what happens if I turn off the tempo sync switch and set my step length to just 16 milliseconds. We can even scale the velocity up ever so slightly to emulate the way a guitarist's strum often accents the top notes. It's a nice major chord, but there's just one problem. Whatever root note we play results in a major chord. And while parallel style chords are nice for house music, I'd much prefer diatonic chords that are fitting in my song's key. If only there was some kind of player device that corrects notes outside of my song's key. Yeah, of course, right. That's exactly what Scales and Chords does. We can add a Scales and Chords player underneath our note echo. Disable the chord switch so that Scales and Chords is simply adjusting the strummed notes coming out of note echo to our song's key, B-flat minor. And if we change the root note, you can hear the chords stay inside the key of B-flat minor, while still changing to different and diatonic chords. What I love about this technique is that you can explore the many cool voicings that happen when Scales and Chords shifts the intervals of a major chord as necessary. Sometimes you get a simple minor chord. Sometimes you get cool suspended chords. And sometimes even diminished chords. And the great news is that it's up to you to explore the really colorful chord progressions you can create this way. So like I said from the start, note echo isn't tough to learn, but it still has enormous creative potential for you to dive deeper and deeper into it. I hope I've got you started today, and I can't wait to hear what you all do with it.